Every morning at exactly 6:15, before the first employee arrived, an elderly janitor unlocked the front doors of Harrison Financial Group. His name was Samuel Carter. He was 78 years old. His gray uniform was neatly pressed, even though it had been repaired more times than anyone could count. His hands shook slightly from arthritis, yet he never missed a single corner while mopping the marble floors. Most people barely noticed him. Some walked past without saying good morning. Others left coffee cups on freshly cleaned desks, as if he weren't standing there. Samuel never complained. Instead, he smiled, wished everyone a wonderful day, and quietly continued working. There was one thing, however, that puzzled everyone in the building. Every Friday afternoon, Samuel disappeared for exactly 1 hour. No one knew where he went. When asked, he simply smiled and replied, "I have someone important to visit." The younger employees often joked about it. Maybe he's secretly rich. Maybe he plays the lottery every Friday. Or maybe he just likes taking long naps. Samuel would hear the laughter, smile politely, and walk away. One rainy Monday morning, a new executive named Ryan joined the company. Ryan was only 35, ambitious, confident, and proud of his success. He believed titles mattered. He believed expensive suits earned respect. And he believed people at the bottom of the company ladder should stay there. On his very first day, he walked through the lobby while talking loudly on his phone. Samuel had just finished mopping the entrance floor. "Careful, sir," Samuel said kindly. "The floor is still a little wet." Ryan didn't even look up. Instead, he stepped directly across the wet floor, leaving muddy footprints everywhere. Then he glanced back. "That's your job, isn't it?" Several employees laughed quietly. Samuel simply nodded. "It certainly is." Without another word, he picked up the mop and cleaned the floor again. The receptionist watched the entire exchange. She walked over, after Ryan disappeared into the elevator. "I'm sorry, Samuel," he smiled. "Don't be. Some people are carrying burdens you can't see." She frowned. He wasn't carrying anything. Samuel looked toward the elevator doors. Oh, yes, he was. She didn't understand what he meant. Over the next few weeks, Ryan's behavior became even worse. He snapped at receptionists, interrupted meetings, ignored assistants, and treated the cleaning staff as though they were invisible. Whenever Samuel emptied Ryan's trash can, he found expensive lunches barely touched, perfectly good sandwiches, fresh fruit, bottles of water. Samuel quietly packed the unopened food into a small reusable bag. One afternoon, another janitor asked, "Why don't you throw it away?" Samuel smiled. Someone else might need it. No one asked another question. Every Friday, Samuel carried that same reusable bag out of the building before returning exactly 1 hour later. The mystery only grew. One afternoon, Ryan noticed him leaving. Curiosity got the better of him. Instead of heading home, Ryan followed Samuel from a distance. The old man walked 6 blocks through light rain until he reached a small neighborhood church. Ryan frowned. What is he doing here? Samuel entered through a side door. Ryan waited outside. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, curiosity won. He quietly stepped inside. The sound of laughter echoed through the church basement. Ryan slowly walked down the stairs. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. Nearly 40 elderly men and women sat around long tables sharing a hot meal. Some used walkers. Others sat in wheelchairs. Many were laughing harder than Ryan had laughed in years. At the center of the room stood Samuel, not with a mop, not in a janitor's uniform, but wearing a simple apron, serving soup with the biggest smile Ryan had ever seen. Every person greeted him by name. "Samuel, you made your chicken soup today. I've been waiting all week." One elderly woman reached for his hand. "You remembered I like extra carrots." Samuel laughed softly. "Of course I remembered." Ryan watched from the doorway, unnoticed. He couldn't understand it. How could a janitor who earned so little afford to feed dozens of people every single Friday? Then he noticed something even stranger. Before anyone else began eating, every person waited. They looked toward Samuel. One gentleman slowly stood. He raised a glass of water and smiled. "Before we eat, let's thank the man who saved more lives than he'll ever admit." The room erupted in applause. Samuel lowered his head, clearly embarrassed. "Oh, now, that's enough." "No," another woman replied. "It will never be enough." Ryan's heart began to race. Saved lives. What did they mean? Who was this quiet old janitor? And why did everyone here treat him like a hero? Ryan had come expecting to uncover an old man's secret. Instead, he had stumbled onto a story no one at Harrison Financial Group had ever imagined. And he was about to discover that Samuel Carter had been hiding something for over 30 years. Something that would change not only Ryan's life, but everyone who had ever underestimated the old man with the mop. Ryan remained hidden near the church doorway, unable to take his eyes off Samuel. The elderly janitor moved from table to table, filling bowls, pulling out chairs, and remembering every person's name. "How's your knee feeling today, Frank?" "Much better, thanks to you," the old man replied with a grin. "And Evelyn," Samuel said with a smile, "I brought the sugar-free pie you like." The elderly woman laughed. "I knew you wouldn't forget." Ryan couldn't believe what he was seeing. At the office, Samuel was almost invisible. Here, he was the heart of the room. After everyone finished eating, Samuel quietly gathered the empty plates while the guests continued talking. Ryan noticed something unusual. Every person leaving the church hugged Samuel. Some whispered, "Thank you." Others simply held his hand for a few seconds before walking away. No one wanted to leave without saying goodbye. As the room emptied, Ryan finally stepped forward. "Samuel." The old man looked up in surprise. "Mr. Ryan? I didn't know you were here." Ryan looked around the nearly empty hall. "What is all this?" Samuel smiled gently. "Just lunch with friends." Ryan shook his head. "No, this is much more than lunch." Samuel didn't answer. Instead, he stacked another plate. Ryan noticed that the church kitchen was old. The refrigerator hummed loudly. Several chairs had been repaired with tape. Nothing about the place looked expensive. Yet every person had eaten a warm meal. "You pay for this?" Ryan asked. Samuel hesitated. "Not all of it. Some neighbors donate vegetables. The bakery gives us bread every Friday. The church lets us use the kitchen. And whatever is missing," he smiled softly, "I cover the rest." Ryan frowned. "On a janitor's salary?" Samuel simply nodded. Ryan was speechless. As they locked the church doors, a little girl ran across the parking lot. She couldn't have been older than 8. She wrapped her arms around Samuel. "Grandpa Sam!" Samuel laughed and lifted her into his arms. "Hello, sunshine." Ryan smiled. "Your granddaughter?" Samuel's expression softened. "No, I've never had children." The little girl held up a drawing. "I made this for you." It showed Samuel standing beneath a huge tree with dozens of smiling people around him. Across the top, written in colorful letters, were the words, "The kindest man in the world." Samuel thanked her as her mother walked over. "We'll see you next Friday." Samuel nodded. "I wouldn't miss it." After they left, Ryan asked quietly, "If she's not your granddaughter, why does she call you Grandpa?" Samuel looked toward the empty playground. "Because everyone deserves to belong to someone." The answer stayed with Ryan all weekend. On Monday morning, he arrived at work earlier than usual. For the first time since joining the company, he noticed Samuel polishing the lobby windows. Instead of walking past him, Ryan stopped. "Good morning." Samuel looked surprised. "Good morning, Mr. Ryan." Ryan hesitated before speaking. "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For showing me something I didn't know I needed to see." Samuel smiled. "We're all still learning." Just then, another executive stormed through the entrance. He bumped Samuel's cleaning cart so hard that a bucket of water spilled across the marble floor. The executive barely slowed down. "Clean it up." Samuel quietly picked up the bucket. Ryan immediately knelt beside him. "Let me help." The lobby became completely silent. Employees walking toward the elevators stopped in their tracks. One receptionist whispered, "Is that really Ryan?" For the first time, he didn't care what anyone thought. Together, he and Samuel cleaned the floor. As they worked, Ryan noticed Samuel rubbing his chest. "You all right?" Samuel smiled. "Just getting old." But a moment later, he grabbed the edge of the cart to steady himself. His face had turned pale. Ryan quickly helped him into a chair. "I'm calling an ambulance." Samuel gently shook his head. "No, I'll be all right." The receptionist hurried over with a glass of water. Samuel thanked her and slowly caught his breath. After several minutes, the color returned to his face. Ryan looked worried. "You should be in a hospital." Samuel smiled. "There's something much more important that needs my money." Ryan stared at him. "What could possibly be more important than your health?" Samuel didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out an old envelope. The edges were worn from being opened hundreds of times. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman holding a baby. Ryan looked confused. "Who are they?" Samuel smiled with both pride and sadness. "The reason I keep going." Before Ryan could ask another question, Samuel carefully placed the photograph back into the envelope. "One day," he said quietly, "I'll tell you their story." Then he picked up his mop and returned to work as though nothing had happened. Ryan watched him disappear down the hallway. Questions filled his mind. Who was the woman in the photograph? Why was Samuel working at 78 when he clearly needed medical care? Why did he spend nearly everything he earned feeding strangers? And why did it seem as though he was carrying a promise he had never broken? Ryan had finally earned Samuel's trust, but he still hadn't uncovered the biggest secret of all. He had no idea that within 24 hours, a black limousine would pull up outside Harrison Financial Group, and everyone inside the building would discover that the quiet old janitor was connected to one of the wealthiest families in America in a way no one could have imagined. The next morning, employees gathered near the front windows as a long black limousine slowly pulled into the company's parking lot. People whispered to one another, "Who's that here to see? Maybe an investor. I heard someone important is visiting." Ryan stood quietly beside Samuel, who was polishing the reception desk as though it were any other morning. A man in his early 60s stepped out of the limousine carrying a leather briefcase. He walked through the front doors, looked around the lobby, and smiled the moment he saw Samuel. Without hesitation, he crossed the room and embraced the elderly janitor. "It's good to see you again, my friend." The entire lobby fell silent. Samuel smiled warmly. "It's been too long, Michael." Ryan looked from one man to the other, completely confused. The visitor turned toward the employees. "My name is Michael Bennett. 34 years ago, I was a frightened young father who had just lost my job. My wife was in the hospital. My daughter was only 6 months old, and I had nowhere left to turn." He looked at Samuel. "I met this man outside a community shelter. He noticed I hadn't eaten. He sat beside me, shared the only sandwich he had, and listened while I told him everything." Samuel lowered his eyes, embarrassed. Michael continued, "That would have been enough. But he didn't stop there. He helped me find temporary work. He introduced me to people who believed in me. And every week, no matter how tired he was after working all day, he checked on my family. There were nights when my little girl had milk because Samuel quietly left groceries at our door. The lobby was completely silent. I promised him I would repay him someday." Samuel smiled gently. "You already have." Michael shook his head. "No, I haven't." He turned toward the employees. "Everything I've built over the last 3 decades started because one stranger refused to walk past me." Ryan finally understood. The Friday lunches, the bags of food, the people at the church. Samuel wasn't helping others because he had plenty. He was helping because someone always needed hope. Michael opened his briefcase and removed a folder. "Our family foundation has been searching for someone to lead a nationwide program serving lonely seniors." He looked directly at Samuel. "We want to name it the Samuel Carter Fellowship." Samuel's eyes widened. "I don't deserve that." Michael smiled. "You've spent your entire life proving that you do." Tears filled Samuel's eyes. "I only did what anyone should do." Michael gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's exactly why your name belongs on it." Ryan felt a lump in his throat. He remembered the muddy footprints he had left on Samuel's freshly mopped floor. He remembered every moment he had looked through the old man instead of at him. Slowly, Ryan stepped forward. "Samuel, I'm ashamed of how I treated you. I judged you before I ever knew you." Samuel smiled the same gentle smile he always had. "Then today is a good day." Ryan looked surprised. "Why?" "Because you've become someone different than you were yesterday." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the employees began to applaud. One by one, people who had barely noticed Samuel every morning walked over to shake his hand. Some thanked him. Others simply hugged him. That Friday, Ryan asked if he could help serve lunch at the church. Samuel handed him an apron and smiled. "I was hoping you'd ask." As bowls of hot soup were placed on the tables, Ryan finally understood something no business school had ever taught him. Success isn't measured by the office you work in. It's measured by the lives that are better because you were there. Months later, the company started a volunteer program inspired by Samuel's example. Employees who had once hurried past strangers now spent weekends serving meals, visiting nursing homes, and helping neighbors in need. One quiet act of kindness had spread farther than anyone imagined. Samuel never became famous. His picture never appeared on magazine covers. Most people never learned his name. But hundreds of people slept with hope in their hearts because one ordinary man chose compassion over recognition. And in the end, that became the greatest legacy anyone could leave behind. If this story touched your heart, subscribe. And if you believe kindness is worth more than money, leave a heart in the comments.